They beat up the wrong girl. Her mother is a serial killer. The autumn wind whipped through Madison's dark hair as she clutched her backpack straps, walking quickly past the rows of identical suburban houses. At 15, she had learned that the 20-minute walk home from Westbrook High was safest when done quickly and quietly. Her worn sneakers made soft sounds against the cracked sidewalk as she kept her head down, hoping today would be different. Madison Reeves wasn't the type to draw attention. Average height, thin frame hidden under oversized hoodies, she moved through the hallways like a ghost. Her mother had taught her to be invisible, to blend in, to never make waves. If only her classmates had gotten the memo. "Hey, Mouse!" The voice cut through the afternoon air like a knife. Madison's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. Brittany. Novak, captain of the volleyball team and self-appointed queen of Westbrook High. The nickname had stuck since freshman year, when Madison had squeaked in surprise during a particularly vicious hallway shove. Madison quickened her pace, but the sound of multiple footsteps behind her made her heart race. 3 sets of feet. That meant Brittany had brought her usual crew. Jessica Palmer with her bleached blonde hair and permanent sneer, and Kayla Washington, who laughed at everything Brittany said like it was comedy gold. "I'm talking to you, freak!" Brittany's voice was closer now. Madison could see the corner of Elm and Riverside up ahead. Just 2 more blocks and she'd be home. Her mother would be at work until late, but at least she'd be safe behind locked doors. A hand grabbed her backpack, yanking her backward so hard she stumbled. "Where do you think you're going?" Brittany spun her around and Madison found herself face to face with her tormentor. Brittany's perfectly contoured face was twisted in disgust, her designer clothes a stark contrast to Madison's thrift store finds. "Please, I just want to go home," Madison whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "Oh, she wants to go home," Jessica mocked, stepping closer. "What's the matter, Mouse? Gonna cry?" The 3 girls had backed Madison against the chain-link fence of the abandoned lot on Elm Street. It was the perfect spot. No houses directly facing it, hidden by overgrown bushes. Madison's hands trembled as she gripped her backpack straps tighter. "You know what really pisses me off about you?" Brittany stepped closer, her breath smelling of mint gum and malice. "You walk around like you're better than everyone, never talking to anyone, always scurrying away like some kind of rodent." "I don't think I'm better than—" The slap came so fast Madison didn't see it coming. Her cheek burned, tears springing to her eyes instantly. She'd been shoved before, had her books knocked out of her hands, even had her lunch tray flipped, but they'd never actually hit her. "Don't interrupt me when I'm talking," Brittany snarled. "God, you're pathetic. No wonder your dad left. Probably couldn't stand looking at you either." The words hurt more than the slap. Madison's father had died when she was 7, not that Brittany cared about facts. The tears spilled over now, and she hated herself for giving them the satisfaction. "She's crying!" Kayla laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Look at the little baby." "You know what? I'm sick of looking at her face every day." Brittany grabbed Madison's backpack and ripped it off her shoulders, tossing it to Jessica. "Let's see what Mouse carries around." "No, please." Madison reached for her bag, but Brittany shoved her hard against the fence. The metal links dug into her back. Jessica dumped the contents on the ground. Books, pencils, and papers scattered across the dirty pavement. Madison's phone, an old model her mother had gotten second-hand, clattered onto the concrete. "Oops," Jessica said sweetly, bringing her heel down on the screen. The crack of breaking glass made Madison flinch. "That's better," Brittany said. "But you know what? I don't think you've learned your lesson yet." The first punch caught Madison in the stomach, doubling her over. She gasped for air, and another blow caught her in the face. Pain exploded across her eye and she tasted blood. She tried to protect herself, but 3 against 1 wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. They took turns. A kick to her ribs from Kayla. Jessica grabbing her hair and slamming her head against the fence. Brittany's fists raining down wherever she could reach. Madison curled into a ball on the ground, but it didn't help. Their laughter mixed with the sound of impact, creating a symphony of cruelty. "This is what you get for being a freak," Brittany panted, standing over her. "Maybe now you'll learn to stay home where you belong." Through her swollen eye, Madison saw Jessica rifling through her scattered belongings. She pocketed the $20 bill from Madison's wallet, her lunch money for that a week, and tossed the empty wallet aside. "Let's go," Brittany said, nudging Madison with her foot. "I need a shower after touching this trash." Their laughter faded as they walked away, leaving Madison crumpled on the ground. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent waves of pain through her body. She lay there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes waiting to make sure they were really gone. Slowly, painfully, she gathered what was left of her belongings. Her books were water-stained and dirty, her phone destroyed, her money gone. But worse than the physical pain was the humiliation. They'd beaten her like she was nothing, less than nothing. The walk home took 3 times as long as usual. Madison limped along, keeping to the shadows, praying no one would see her. Her reflection in a car window made her stumble. Her right eye was already swelling shut, purple, bruises blooming across her face. Blood had dried on her split lip. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her house key. The modest 2-story home looked the same as always. Neat lawn, white fence, nothing to indicate the darkness that lived. Inside, Madison had always been grateful for her mother's obsession with appearing normal. It meant their house was a fortress of security systems and privacy. She barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. The pain, the humiliation, the sheer helplessness of it all came rushing out. She cleaned herself up as best she could, but there was no hiding what had happened. Her face looked like she'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. Madison curled up on her bed, pulling a pillow over her head. She didn't want to think about going back to school tomorrow, didn't want to think about facing them again. Maybe she could convince her mom to let her transfer schools, start fresh somewhere else. The sound of the front door opening made her freeze. Her mother wasn't supposed to be home for hours. Madison? I got off early and thought we could... Eleanor, Reeves' voice cut off abruptly. Madison heard quick footsteps on the stairs, and then her bedroom door opened. Her mother stood in the doorway, still in her nurse's scrubs from the hospital. Eleanor was everything Madison wasn't. Tall, confident, with sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes took in Madison's battered face, and something dangerous flickered across Elena's expression. Who? The single word was soft, almost gentle, but Madison knew that tone. She'd heard it only once before when she was 10, and a man had tried to grab her at the park. That man had disappeared 2 days later. Mom, it's nothing. Don't lie to me. Elena sat on the bed, carefully examining Madison's injuries with clinical precision. Names, Madison. Give me their names. Madison found herself spilling everything. Brittany Novak, Jessica Palmer, Kayla Washington, the months of torment leading up to today, the corner of Elm and Riverside, the beating, the theft. The words tumbled out between sobs. Elena listened in silence, her face a mask of calm. Only her hands betrayed her rage, clenching and unclenching in her lap. When Madison finished, Elena stood and walked to the window, staring out at the peaceful suburban street. Go take a hot bath, she said finally. I'll make dinner. Mom, bath. Now? Madison didn't argue. She knew that tone too. As she soaked in the tub, she tried not to think about the look in her mother's eyes. The look that reminded her why they'd moved so many times when she was younger. Why her mother knew 17 different ways to make someone disappear without a trace. Elena Reeves hadn't always been a nurse at Westbrook General. Before Madison, before the careful construction of their normal life, she'd been something else. Something that had required different skills. Skills she'd promised herself she'd never use again. But promises were made to be broken when someone hurt her daughter. Downstairs, Eleanor made dinner with mechanical precision. Comfort food, Madison's favorite pasta, garlic bread, the chocolate, cake she'd been saving for the weekend. She set the table for 2, lit candles, put on soft music. A normal mother-daughter dinner. Madison came down in her pajamas, looking small and fragile. The bruises were darker now, purple and black, painting her face like a grotesque mask. Eleanor's hands tightened on her fork. Eat, she said gently. You need your strength. They ate in comfortable silence. Eleanor kept Madison's plate full. Made sure she drank plenty of water, fetched ice packs for the worst of the swelling. She was the picture of maternal care. I'll stay home from work tomorrow, Eleanor said as she cleared the dishes. We'll watch movies, order takeout. How does that sound? Madison nodded gratefully. Thanks, Mum. I'm sorry about... You have nothing to apologize for. Eleanor's voice was firm. Nothing. Understood? That night, Eleanor tucked Madison into bed like she hadn't done in years. She smoothed her daughter's hair, careful of the bruises, and kissed her forehead. Sleep, she murmured. Everything will be better soon. Madison was asleep within minutes, exhaustion and pain medication pulling her under. Elena stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall. Then she walked to her own bedroom and opened the closet. Behind the rows of scrubs and casual clothes was a locked cabinet. Elena spun the combination from memory and opened it. Inside were the tools of her former trade, things she'd kept, just in case. She ran her fingers over them like old friends. The hunting knife, perfectly balanced. The garrote wire, thin as dental floss, but strong enough to cut through bone. The syringes and vials, filled with substances that didn't have names. the leather gloves that left no prints. Eleanor had been 22 when she'd made her first kill. Her man who'd hurt children. The police couldn't touch him, but she could. She'd found she had a talent for it, the planning, the execution, the cleanup. For 5 years, she'd been a ghost, removing those who preyed on the innocent. Then she'd gotten pregnant. Madison's father had been a mistake, a moment of weakness, but Madison herself had been a revelation. Eleanor had walked away from her old life, created a new identity, became the perfect single mother. She thought she could leave the darkness behind, but darkness had a way of finding you. Elena dressed in black, not the theatrical outfit of movie killers, but practical clothes that wouldn't show blood. She pulled her hair back, slipped on the gloves and selected her tools. Tonight would require precision. She left through the back door, moving through the shadows with practiced ease. Brittany Novak lived 6 blocks away in the wealthy part of town. Elena had done her research months ago, the moment Madison had first mentioned the bullying. Old habits died hard. The Novak house was a monument to excess. 3 stories, circular, driveway security system that Elena bypassed in under 30 seconds. She'd learned from the best after all. The family was home, lights blazing in every window, perfect. Elena waited in the pool house, patient as a spider. She knew Brittany's routine from weeks of observation. Every night at 11, the girl would sneak out here to smoke the cigarette she hid from her parents. Teenagers were so predictable. At 11:03, the sliding door opened. Brittany crept out in designer pajamas, looking around furtively before heading to the pool house. She didn't see Elena until it was too late. The garrote wire was around her throat. Before she could scream, Eleanor pulled her into the shadows, applying just enough pressure to terrify but not enough to kill. Yet. "Hello, Brittany." Eleanor's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "We need to talk about Madison." Brittany's eyes went wide with terror. She clawed at the wire, but Elena's grip was iron. "You're going to listen very carefully," Elena continued. "Nod if you understand." Brittany nodded frantically. "Good girl, you hurt my daughter today, broke her phone, stole her money, beat her until she could barely walk. That wasn't very nice, was it?" A whimper escaped Brittany's throat. "I asked you a question." Brittany shook her head violently. "Better." Eleanor loosened the wire just enough for Brittany to gulp air. "Now, normally I would kill you. Slowly, painfully. I'd make it last for hours, days even. I'm very good at keeping people alive when they want to die." Tears streamed down Brittany's face. The smell of urine filled the air as she lost control of her bladder. "But Madison wouldn't want that. She's good, you see, pure, everything I'm not." Elena's voice hardened. "So I'm going to give you one chance. One, you're going to leave my daughter alone. You're going to tell your friends to leave her alone. If she gets so much as a dirty look from any of you, I'll come back. And next time, I won't be so merciful." She released Brittany, who collapsed to the ground, gasping and sobbing. Eleanor crouched beside her, grabbing her chin and forcing her to make eye contact. "Look at me. Do I seem like I'm bluffing?" Brittany stared into Eleanor's eyes and saw death. Looking back, she shook her head frantically. "Smart girl. Oh, and Brittany, you're going to return Madison's money tomorrow. Leave it in her locker with an apology note. A sincere one." Elena stood and melted back into the shadows. She had 2 more visits to make tonight. Jessica Palmer was easier. Elena caught her alone in her bedroom, earbuds in, texting on her phone. The knife against her throat got her attention quickly enough. Elena delivered the same message, the same warning. Jessica hyperventilated through the entire encounter, passing out when Elena finally left. Kayla Washington proved the most challenging. The girl lived in an apartment complex with better security, but Elena had learned long ago that every system had weaknesses. She found Kayla in the underground parking garage, about to get into her car after a late shift at the mall. The syringe was in her neck before she knew what was happening. Not enough to kill, just enough to paralyze. Elena dragged her into the shadows between 2 vans and waited for the drug to take effect. "You can hear me, but you can't move," Elena explained calmly. "The drug will wear off in about an hour. Until then, you're going to listen." Kayla's eyes darted frantically, the only part of her body she could still control. "You participated in beating my daughter today. That was a mistake." Eleanor held up another syringe, this one filled with clear liquid. "Do you know what this is? It's a neurotoxin. 1 drop, and you'll spend the rest of your life in agony. Your nerves will feel like they're on fire, but nothing will stop the pain. Not drugs. Not surgery, nothing. You'll beg for death, but it won't come." She let the needle hover over Kayla's arm. "Or you can choose door number 2, leave Madison alone. Convince your friends to leave her alone. Never speak to her, look at her, or come within 50 feet of her again. Nod if you understand." Kayla's head moved fractionally. Excellent choice. Elena pocketed the syringe and stood. Remember, I know where you live. I know where you work. I know your class schedule, your favorite coffee shop, the route you run every morning. There's nowhere you can go that I can't find you. She left Kayla paralyzed in the garage, knowing the girl would spend the next hour contemplating her mortality. Elena arrived home just before 3 a.m. She disposed of her clothes in the incinerator she'd installed in the basement years ago, then took a long, hot shower. The familiar ritual of cleaning away evidence soothed her. She checked on Madison one more time. Her daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the night's activities. Elena smoothed the blankets and whispered a promise. No one will ever hurt you again. The next morning, Madison woke to the smell of pancakes. Her body ached, but the swelling had gone down some. She limped downstairs to find her mother humming in the kitchen, looking perfectly normal in her fuzzy slippers and robe. Morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, Madison admitted, sliding into a chair. That's to be expected. Eat up. We have a lazy day ahead of us. They spent the day watching movies, Elena fussing over Madison like a mother hen. It was nice, comfortable. Madison almost forgot about what awaited her at school. The next day, Elena insisted on driving her. Mom, I can walk. Humor me. Madison didn't argue. Her stomach churned as they pulled up to Westbrook High. How could she face them? How could she walk these halls knowing everyone would stare at her bruised face? Chin up, Elena said softly. You're stronger than you know. Madison took a deep breath and got out of the car. The walk to her locker felt like a death march. Students stared and whispered, but something was different. The usual snickers and taunts were replaced by something else. Shock, fear. She turned the corner and froze. Brittany, Jessica, and Kayla stood by her locker. Madison's heart hammered, but then she noticed something odd. They looked terrible. Brittany had angry red marks on her neck, barely hidden by a scarf. Jessica's eyes were red and puffy, darting around like a scared rabbit. Kayla stood stiffly as if movement hurt. They saw her coming and went absolutely white. Madison! Brittany's voice cracked. We wanted to apologize. Madison blinked. What? For yesterday. For everything. Brittany's hands shook as she held out an envelope. This is your money, and we're sorry. Really, truly sorry. Jessica nodded frantically. It was wrong. We were wrong. It'll never happen again. Never, Kayla whispered, her voice hoarse. Madison took the envelope, too stunned to speak. The three girls backed away like Madison was radioactive. We'll leave you alone now, Brittany said. Forever. You have our word. They practically ran down the hallway, leaving Madison standing there in shock. She opened her locker and found not just her $20, but $60. A handwritten note was attached. Madison, I'm deeply sorry for everything I've done to you. You didn't deserve any of it. I promise you'll never have to worry about us again. Please forgive me. Brittany. The rest of the day passed in a surreal blur. Word spread quickly through the school. The three most vicious bullies at Westbrook High were terrified of Madison Reeves. They jumped when she walked by, avoided her gaze, took different routes to avoid her in the hallways. Other students looked at her differently too, not with pity anymore, but with a kind of wary respect. Whatever had happened to make Brittany, Novak apologized, must have been serious. Rumors flew. Madison had mob connections. Her mother was in witness protection. She knew people who knew people. Madison didn't correct any of them. She just focused on her classes, ate lunch in peace for the first time all year, and tried to process the sudden shift in her world. When Eleanor picked her up after school, Madison studied her mother's serene face. Good day? Eleanor asked innocently. The strangest thing happened. Brittany and her friends apologized, gave me my money back, plus extra. They seemed scared. How odd. Eleanor's expression didn't change. Perhaps they developed a conscience. Mom, yes, sweetheart. Madison thought about pushing, demanding answers. But looking at her mother, the woman who'd raised her alone, who'd never let anyone hurt her, who'd given up everything to keep her safe, she decided some questions were better left unasked. Thank you, she said simply. Elena smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Always, baby, always. The weeks that followed were the most peaceful of Madison's high school career. True to their word, her former tormentors gave her a wide berth. Other bullies, seeing what had happened to the untouchable trio, decided Madison wasn't worth the risk. She made a few friends, joined the art club, even went to a school dance. Sometimes she caught glimpses of Brittany in the halls. The girl would quickly look away, but Madison saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Understanding. Brittany knew now what it felt like to be powerless, to be afraid. She'd learned empathy the hard way. Elena never spoke of that night, and Madison never asked. But sometimes when Madison came home with stories of her day, she'd catch her mother smiling. Not the polite smile of a normal parent, but something sharper, more satisfied. They'd found their peace, mother and daughter. Madison had learned she didn't have to face her battles alone, and anyone who thought about disturbing that peace would learn that there were worse things than high school bullies. Sometimes the monster under the bed was real, and sometimes, just sometimes, the monster was on your side. As Madison grew older, she understood more about the price of her safety, the darkness her mother carried so she could walk in the light. It was a debt she could never repay, a sacrifice she could never fully comprehend, but she could honor it, by living well, by being kind, by standing up for others who couldn't stand up for themselves, by being everything her mother had fought to let her be, good, pure, unbroken by the cruelty of the world. The bullies had chosen the wrong girl. They'd learned that lesson in terror and sleepless nights, in the knowledge that death had looked them in the eye and chosen mercy. But mercy, they discovered, could be its own kind of torment. Madison Reeves walked the halls of Westbrook High, with her head held high, no longer a mouse but not a predator either. She was something in between, something unique, a girl who'd been protected by a monster and chose to remain human. And in a modest two-story house on a quiet street, Eleanor Reeves kept her tools sharp and her skills honed, just in case, because a mother's love knew no bounds, and heaven help anyone who forgot that lesson. The peaceful years passed, but the warning remained, whispered in schoolyard rumors and careful glances. Be kind to Madison Reeves. You really don't want to meet her, Mother.